It is 5 minutes past 8 a.m. on 32 FM 94.9. The program is The Podium, and my name is HEZEKIAH, OLUWASEUN AKINRINDE. Good morning and welcome to today's edition. On the program this morning, I'll be running two segments. The first segment will be one that will pay tribute to the now departed former publicity secretary of AKINRINDE, Mr. Yinka Odumaki. Mr. Yinka Odumaki was reported to have died in the late hours of last Friday, which was Good Friday. And the news is no longer new. But then there have been reactions after his death. There have been statements from high-ranking Nigerians and groups of interests. So this morning, it's a humbling segment for me because Yinka Odumaki was a man I had known for a few years before his death. I interviewed him on the 30th of January. We discussed the crises in Yoruba land with a specific mention of the Ibarakpa region of Oyo State. We discussed the Yoruba agenda as it affects restructuring and the political game in Nigeria. Towards the end of the interview, I also asked Yinka Odumaki a personal question about what he does and how he is able to finance some of his extensive endeavors. Yinka Odumaki had candor. Yinka Odumaki was sincere. Yinka Odumaki was not afraid of standing up to the opposition. Odumaki was a man of great conviction. Odumaki was not afraid to speak his mind whenever his opinion was sought. He was a man who loved his tribe. Until his latter years, if I may put it that way, Yinka Odumake believed in the one Nigeria dream. But unfortunately, his hands were forced to admit that this baby was trying to save could no longer be saved. It had been afflicted by gangrene. The hemorrhage that had happened to the nation was too much in size to be controlled. Yinka Odumake had to accept that if Nigeria was going to leave, then the component units would have to fight for their own independence within an independent state. It was at the vanguard of the Yoruba nation coming out of the tight hold of those he called the Northern Feudal Lords. He was loved by many for his conviction. He was hated by many for his conviction. Did you read that statement that was released by the Arewa Consultative Forum? Yinka Odumake was more or less called a tribalist. They even said they hoped he had lived long enough to see a change in the approach of the Afenifere towards the subject of Nigerianism. Lasisi Laguju, who is an editor with the Nigerian Tribune, wrote a very beautiful memorial for Yinka Odumake. I'm going to read an extract before I go to play some excerpts of my interview with him on January 30. Lasisi Laguju says, and I quote, "Our friend's outings filled the coward with apprehension. He had knowledge, he had language, he had style, he had delivery and performance, he had courage, he held fire and he held water. He was a warrior the enemy never wished to engage. Was that why the Arewa Consultative Forum clinked glasses as condolence on Saturday? The ACF said it was mourning Odumake, yet it wrote a condolence message tipped with a warhead against the departed and his group. It said, quote now, "We continue to hope that the Afenifere will one day turn a new leaf and see issues not from the narrow and limited perspective of one ethnic group, but from the broad perspective of a multi-ethnic federal republic. We had hoped that Odumake will live long enough to work for and see the new day. His death today has robbed us of that opportunity." End of quote. Is this how Northern Nigeria mourns the dead? If our friend were to reply this from the other side, I am almost sure he would simply say, "Clash of civilizations." That is his favorite phrase each time we interrogated why Nigeria's north always flew its plane in the wrong direction. I'm going to jump now. A philosopher said birth and death are the bookends of our lives. Death itself is a confounding reality, a solid wall that we all hit at the very end, as the very end of our future. It is also paradoxically the doorway through which we must all pass to a place called eternity. It is a destination we are born to reach. For some, the journey is an involuntary race, For some others, it is a leisurely stroll. At the end, we all arrive, but at what age we breast that tape, no one alive guesses that correctly. For our friend, the end came on Saturday, midway between his 50th and his 60th year on this plane. We will all return home. American novelist Ernest Hemingway tells us to know that every man's life ends the same way. He adds that it is only the details of how he lived and how he died that distinguish one man from another. 17th century Anglo-Welsh royalist poet Catherine Phillips, in her epitaph, also ponders on life and its lack of meaning. She says, "What on earth deserves our trust? Youth and beauty both are dust. Good night, comrade. That was Lasisi Laguju writing a tribute to Yinka Odumaki. Yinka Odumaki, for me, was a man who wrote his own epitaph before his death. And the epitaph he wrote was that Yinka Odumaki was a man who had 100% conviction and persuasion about whatever cause he chose to stand with. Yinka Odumaki was with Nadeko. Yinka Odumaki was clamped into jail, maybe detention you call it, by the Sani Abacha regime when he took a stand with the people against the tyranny and jackboot authoritarianism of that government. It was while in detention that he met his wife, Dr. Joe Odumaki, another fiery activist. Yinka Odumaki stood on the side of the people when the Save Nigeria group was formed. When it was time to fight for the liberation of his people, the political liberation of his people, Yinka Odumaki stood and he loomed large like a behemoth. Like I said, he wasn't liked by many. He was admired by many still. But his conviction never wavered. Odumaki had a conscience that was not for sale. Odumaki never held a political office, but he remained in the consciousness of the people. He was a thorn in the side of the political class. I had a private conversation with him in the early days of his foray into radio business in Ibadan. His radio station had just opened, and I visited him. It was a business visit. But then we got into a personal talk because I had met him years before when I was the president of my departmental association at Obafemi Awolowo University. He was an alumnus of that same department. And then I asked him, and I said, with all God has done for you, why would you venture into radio? What more are you looking for? Yinka Odumaki told me. He said, does a man rest until a cause he has chosen close to his heart is accomplished? He said radio would give the voice that he would need at critical points. He said if they shut him down in other stations, could they shut him down in his own station? Yinka told me, he said, I'm not looking for money. Not anymore at this point. But I need an opportunity to identify with the basest of the society and then help them to amplify whatever it is their concerns are. Less than 6 years after that venture, Yinka Odumaki has joined the ancestors. Yinka Odumaki has transcended the planes of the mortals to become what they will call an Ebora. I will play excerpts of that interview with Yinka Odumaki. It was a 40-minute interview. I can't take everything this morning. I will just take a part of it. If I can find a way to jump, I will jump in between this recording. And afterwards, I will have a chat with the organizing secretary of the Afenifere, Abagokole Omololu. It will be a brief chat about the philosophy of Yinka Odumaki, how he discharged his duties as the face of the Afenifere in the public space, and what becomes of the Afenifere after this time. You sit back and listen. All right, thank you for staying with me. And I have on the phone now the publicity secretary of Afenifere, Joining me live on telephone from Lagos, Mr. Yinka Odumaki. Mr. Odumaki, good morning.
Yeah.
And thank you for joining me on the podium.
All right. Thank you.
All right, let's start from the point of the recent crisis in Ibarakba, Oyo State. What is Afeniferi's official position on this issue?
Our position is clear. What the Fulani herdsmen are doing by Rafah is not acceptable to us. Killing people are random. Remember the illustrious people have lost in that place. We have lost of OLUWASEUN, Aborode, and the rest of them. This Fulani with wanton recklessness. Can Yoruba people go to their land and be killing people like that without consequences? We will not do it. But if we do it, we know that there will be consequences. So we don't accept what they have done. And we saw the righteous implication of people like Sunday Igboho and the rest of them. Though we assist to him to take it easy in the interest of law and order. But what the people are doing is criminal, heinous, barbaric, and unacceptable.
You called Sunday Igboho's reaction a righteous indignation. Does this mean that the Afenifere endorses the actions of Sunday Igboho from the point of giving an ultimatum and then following up with that threat?
Well, clearly, we cannot endorse these invaders to be killing people with reckless abandon. And we said that, no, that's okay with us. Cannot be.
Okay, does that mean you have not answered me, Mr. Odumaki? The Afenifere endorsed Sunday Igboho's action?
For every action, there's always a reaction. Our people have been too tolerant, too peaceful, too in the interest of peace. They have allowed it to go on for long. People collecting ransom on our land. You had they have paid to HEZEKIAH and ransom. Where is that done? Can we go there to their own land and be doing that? What will not do to others, no one will do to us.
So if the Afenifere supported Sunday Igboho because you said for every action there is a reaction. Now, Afenifere is a body that supposedly extols the ethos of Omoluabi. Would you describe Igboho as an Omoluabi going by his antecedents? Or do we just make reference to the Omoluabi ethos by what is convenient for us?
Look, it's not what is convenient. Is there any law that says somebody can come on land and be killing your people? Should we accept killing our people? No. That's the righteous indignation that we support of. It's not about the person of Sunday Igboho. It's about that you cannot come on my land and be killing my people without doing anything to you. Out of wickedness, recklessness, it's not acceptable at all.
But do you fight lawlessness with lawlessness? Because are we not laying a dangerous precedent?
There should not be lawlessness in the first place. You are talking about fighting lawlessness with lawlessness. There should not be lawlessness. Lawlessness should not be permitted in the first place, which the Nigerian government has been doing for many years and for all the crimes been committing across the land. Not only in the State, so look at those days. Look at the leader of Afenifere. They killed his daughter almost 2 years ago. And not back. Was killed on the streets. Hello? Yeah?
I'm with you, Mr. Odumaki.
I said, Funke Olakun, the daughter of Afenifere, was killed on the street. Oluwa, a first-class of Anosis, was killed on the street in the afternoon. What have we done to them? Olufala was kidnapped.
Mr. Odumaki, you are an active player in the political space.
Yes.
There have been arguments that Sunday Igboho is being used by some politicians to gain political capital. And considering his sudden activism, do you also not think that there is a political dimension to this? There is something opportunistic about this sudden interest Because the Barapa Okyogun issue did not start yesterday.
Then you must say that there were some political killings. That some political forces are also sponsoring herdsmen to go and kill our people, to create crisis.
But the Oyo State governor,
we can't talk about Sunday Igboho in this matter without those who are killing our people, kidnapping our people, raping our women. But to talk about them.
The Oyo State governor, in his broadcast prior to that Friday expulsion of Fulanis in Igogo, said you cannot put an ethnic coloration to crime. A crime is a crime. The governor was, in other words, saying that, look, you just saying it's Fulani headsmen may not be entirely correct. And you know, recently some arrests done by the police also revealed that some Yorubas were arrested. They were involved in the kidnappings in that axis. Does this still not cast a doubt on this general use of Fulani headsmen?
There's no doubt that these criminals with a lot of money may also have their resolve to recruit on local collaborators. The government will be right in that. But there's nobody, the Fulani is a 26 man in Nigeria. There's nobody who does not know the Fulani man. The Fulani man knows himself. A Fulani man is different from man, it's different from Yoruba man, it's different from Hausa man. A Fulani man is special, they are special, they are like Arabs. People know them.
Now, considering that we have some Yorubas who are involved in this crime, as arrests have proven, should we not tone down the use of the phrase Fulani headsmen?
No, we cannot stop that.
But we cannot call everybody Fulani headsmen if you have Yorubas.
The Fulani men are the main perpetrators of this crime. We cannot leave them out. All the four people who are arrested, who have been tried now for Puke or Lakune's murder, they are Fulani people. People here who may tell officials. Those who are arrested civilly, they said in court that they are Fulani men. How can we stop talking about that? To please the Fulani because they have the Fulani president? No.
I'm saying, but those ones that some of those that were arrested in Okyogu, Ibarakpa axis, we have Yorubas among them.
Well, if they are Yoruba,
should we not just call criminals criminals?
No. These are not just criminals. This is a crime being led by the Fulani.
Is every Fulani headsman a criminal?
No. Not, we have not said that they're all very criminals. Most of them who are here now. No, we have lived them for decades. They didn't call me as criminals. But the Fulani who have come into our land in recent years to Yoruba land, they are criminals who are committing crimes. They have surrounded us and they are committing crimes on the limit.
Okay, now beyond the media engagement, Mr. Yinka Odumaki, now as an umbrella body for the Yoruba race, what specifically has Afenifere done over time? Because a lot of the time when these killings happen, the Afenifere comes to the press and makes a lot of pointed statements. But then, what's in terms of local solutions as the Afenifere embarked upon to ensure that these killings and kidnappings stop in the region?
You know, Afenifere were major players. We are major players in 2014 National Conference. We have resolved this matter by saying that ranching should be the solution. You cannot be free open grazing of cattle everywhere. We all send that report, all the delegates. Until President Buhari came and said that he will not look at the report, he will keep it in the archives. If you had implemented that report, we will have found solution to this headsman thing. But not to present that report as a project, and government in particular, as a project. Look at when the local governor gave a long order. Don't live in our forest reserves. It was Garba Shehu who spoke to the president, who told the herdsmen that ignore him, can go ahead. Are they animals?
And there you see the progression of my discussions with Yinka Odumaki, who at the time was the publicity secretary of Afenifere. Now he has gone to the world beyond. I'm finding a way of jumping or skipping a part of the engagement. Like I told you, it's about 40 minutes in length. And then because I want to engage Abago Koliomololu for about 15 minutes, I'm going to have to jump it. Let me see if I succeeded with that.
It's very important. You must be progressive. And the Buhari thing you mentioned in 2011, I was in Buhari campaign because of Pastor Tunde Bakare was running me, was an associate, not because of Buhari. I never knew Buhari as a person on the other side.
Oh, okay, that answers my question. Is Femi Fani-Kayode a progressive?
Well, he expressed progressive views. He stands with a progressive family. And how do you say I should reject Fani-Kayode when I have an identified Kaduna as the governor who will justify the killings of some people Kaduna by foreign Fulani?
Is it?
I now say that I should reject Fani-Kayode whose views are progressive always.
Is it not the case that the Afenifere overlooks your sins and your failures? Once you come into that fold and you agree with whatever they want to push, including the subject of restructuring, knowing that Femi Fani-Kayode was a prominent player in a government that didn't think restructuring was needed? Or is it just that the Afenifere gathers